169 of the ILO, right? So this is ILO C-169, and specifically, sort of to take all of this conceptual baggage and make it digestible, is that the international community recognized the bias inherent in C-107 and modified that bias, not even modified, sort of purged, I guess, exterminated, got rid of, clarified that bias, removed, extracted that bias from Convention 107 of the International Labor Organization of 57, and made it better in 89, right, in C-169. So where are we? Number 2, June 7th, 1989, ILO Convention number 169, quote, renounces the simulationist, simulations, is that the right word? 60, what page is that? That's page 151. Let me just make sure I wrote the right word. 151. Which renounces the assimilationism. Yeah, I wrote that word wrong. Let me change that, sorry. Renounces the assimilationism. Okay, sorry about that. Alright, so I'll actually read it from the book, that way I get the quote right. Non-compliant states. Okay, so reading directly from the book, I need to adjust my notes. Page 151, left column, basically first paragraph. For groups that lived in the states that have ratified the 1989 ILO Convention number 169 concerning indigenous and tribal peoples in independent countries, 169 again, which renounces the assimilationism of the earlier ILO 107, C-107, right? ILO C-107 introduces the idea of having yet to integrate, which is code for assimilate, and in 89, Convention 169 attempts to sort of excise that assimilationist undertone. So, which renounces the assimilationism of earlier ILO C-107 and also replaces it in states that have signed both the ILO Secretariat itself, is a key site of activism as it proffers mechanisms for investigating, indigenous peoples' complaints against non-compliant states, right? So what ends up happening is for states who aren't complying, right, and which means states are continually, irrespective of international law, not recognizing the human rights of indigenous populations. I guess, I'm not sure if they use the word ratification, but I would imagine it's been ratified, and also amended in a sense. The ratified and amended, I could be wrong in the selection of those terms, I'm not a lawyer, but the transformation, the change in sort of stance by the ILO is to recognize we need to eliminate the assimilationist undertone in C-107, and that's what it did, right? So in Convention 169, generally speaking, eliminates So basically, the ILO Convention 169 attempts to eliminate assimilationist undertone of Convention 107 of 57, right? 107 of 57. So what we end up seeing here is that within the, and this is the point. This is why I don't personally do sort of the historical bit, and I just do the conceptual bit. Not that the historical bit isn't important; it's absolutely important. Primarily, the stuff that I read is history, believe it or not. Aside from philosophy, well, everything I read is philosophy, but the only other thing that I'll entertain is sort of history, to a lesser extent maybe anthropology if it's Joseph Campbell, but it's interesting, right? It's interesting to see the transformation between 57 and 89, not just in the law, but in the recognition that individuals within a broader community had to their perception of indigenous populations, with respect to their perception of themselves, with respect to a recognition of the relationship between themselves and indigenous populations, right? So three very, very important points, right? The transformation in sort of law is a consequence of, you can think of it in three ways, right? This is where, you know, sort of good logic sort of just comes in. One, a recognition of the other. Two, a recognition of myself and how I used to think, right? How I thought in 57, how I think now in 89, right? So this is two. And three, a recognition of my relationship to the other, right? What is my recognition of indigenous populations in 59? What is my recognition of indigenous populations in 89? What is my recognition of myself in 57? What is recognition of myself in 89? What is the recognition of the relationship between myself and indigenous populations in 57? And finally, what is the recognition of myself and indigenous populations in 89? Lots and lots of different ways that you can sort of like systematically break this down. And this is where historians would do well to contribute, right? To talk about sort of the transformation in social movements. Obviously, we're going through civil rights protests here in the United States. We are going through Vietnam War. We're going through lots and lots of things, right, between 57 and 89, historically, to change sort of international interpretation of any number of facets of the recognition of indigenous populations. And it obviously became what I would consider a good thing, right? A better thing, maybe not the best thing, but a better recognition. A recognition, hopefully, that, and I think we can even push it further, that we really are a community of individuals attempting to see each other, you know, the indigenous population and myself and so on. That's the kumbaya version, right? That's you know, all things being equal and fluffy and great in the world. Unfortunately, you know, I'm a bit of a pessimist. I don't think that's ever going to happen. Sorry. Okay, so that explains two. I just want to read the corresponding article. So 2I, bottom of page 18, Article 33. And I've provided links and citations so that you can, you know, if you're interested in indigenous populations, which I think is just, you know, just unfortunately just even within academia, where we love in academia to find sort of subaltern, marginalized indigenous populations to, you know, go through ethnographies or conceptual analyses. It's even within academia who has a taste for that. Indigenous populations are still underrepresented with respect to larger socio-cultural issues, right? Many other socio-cultural issues find its way into publication and into books because it sells. Urban warfare, discrimination practices, gender biases, blah, blah, blah. Industrial population, not too many people buying books, selling books specifically on that, comparatively speaking, which is, I think, a tragedy. All right, so Article 33.1, quote, "The governmental authority responsible for the matters covered in this convention shall ensure that agencies or other appropriate mechanisms exist to administer the programs affecting the people's concern, and shall ensure that they have the means necessary for the proper fulfillment of the functions assigned to them." Right? You have to provide the means necessary for communities to actualize that self-determination, which might mean, in some sense, that you leave them alone, which becomes the most problematic. We'll get into sort of territorial rights in a second. These programs shall include A, the planning, coordination, execution, and evaluation in cooperation with peoples concerned of the measures provided for in this convention. B, proposing of legislative and other measures to the competent authorities and supervision of the application, the measures taken in cooperation with the people's concern. Taken in cooperation with the people concerned, right? So the attempt is to recognize that key term, and I probably should have highlighted some of this. I haven't highlighted. Cooperation with the people's concerned is extremely important, and agencies of other appropriate mechanisms exist to administer, right? The fact is, unlike 107, where it was, what was the phrasing? are not yet integrated, right? In 107, Convention 107, when we're